It's the one question that I have been asked by far the most over the course of the last few months. What the hell is wrong with dirt, specifically the sprint cars and the midgets? Well, to be quite honest, I haven't really cared nor messed around with them that much over the last couple of months, but since we have our upcoming Road to Pro sprint car program happening here in the next couple of weeks, and with me just updating and creating all new workbooks for the dirt oval cars in Motec, I figured I would dive in and finally try to figure out what the hell is going on with these cars, why these stupid exploits work, and what is really wrong with them, by looking at a bunch of different theories that people have and seeing if we can figure it out. So hopefully it can be fixed. So in today's video, we're going to dive in and take a look at the wing sprint car, and I've got some really interesting stuff that I have discovered with these cars on why they do what they do, why people are running these wonky ass stupid setups, and more importantly, why those work. Stick around. What's up, everybody? Thomas Brandon here. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. And like I said, today we're going to be diving into this wing sprint car nonsense specifically. We're also going to take a look really quick at the dirt midgets. More or less, I just want to kind of disprove a couple of things that people have thought about those in terms of the theories on them. And then I'm going to show you why I think the issues with the wing sprint cars are what they are. Okay, so I've got data here to show you guys a bunch of different stuff that we're going to be taking a look at. So with that being said, let's head on over to the garage and start taking a look. Now, most of you, I'm sure, who have been running sprint car officials or watched the Pro Series a few months ago or anything like that, have probably seen wing sprint cars on the track that look like this. And you've probably thought to yourself, what the hell, right? Because this is not how you would see a winged sprint car look in real life. Remember, what's supposed to be different about iRacing is the fact that it is a sim. This is supposed to be sim racing. Sim, short for simulation, being the key word there, okay? Right? This is supposed to be simulating real life. Now, understand, I have a background in real life racing when it comes to sprint cars, midgets, things like that. No, I never drove them, but I spent years building them, setting them up, tuning them, crew chiefing, whatever you want to call it, slinging wrenches, all right? I was around them. Never, okay, in all of my time, and also time before or after on a wing sprint car, would you ever do this to the car. If I had put this kind of setup on my driver's car, they would have probably arrested me for, I don't know, attempted manslaughter. Like, you just don't do this, okay? There's no reason that this should work. Now, the problem is it not only works, but it's actually faster in almost every case, okay? And it's faster by a couple of tenths of a second. Now, here's the thing. It's difficult to drive. It's not that easy to drive. The reason why is because it's so opposite of what we try to accomplish with a winged sprint car. The reason that, or the way that we want these cars to work is we want them to go into the corner, they wing over, and then we want to just basically go nice and straight, just boom, right through the corner, right? Go watch them in real life, watch them on the sim before this, update, anything like that, and that's what you would see. Okay, the whole purpose of these things, the whole purpose of the wing, is for them to basically wing over and go through the corner as straight as possible, right? That is the key to them. What has happened since the last update, and full disclosure, when the last update happened on these cars, I loved it, all right? Before I knew about this exploit, I loved it. You can feel the track better. The tire had grip. There was so many more improvements with this last update. I thought it was a huge step in the right direction. When these exploits were discovered and people started running this crap, I was like many people, I was extremely upset. I thought the racing sucked. I thought the racing in the Pro Series this year was not very good. Watching all these guys go around the track with their left rear tire basically off the ground. I just didn't like it, okay? I was not a fan of it. I don't like driving them like this. I don't think it's fun. I think it sucks. I do. And the thing that frustrates me the most is the fact that this works. And here's the deal. Like I said, this should not work, okay? It shouldn't, all right? You should not have more grip with your left rear tire basically off the ground. You shouldn't, okay? But yet we do. So here's the question. What's going on, right? What's happening with the physics of the car to cause this problem? Well, first of all, before we dive into that, let's cover a couple of things that people have kind of thrown out as theories, and let's just take a look at those real quick. And I'll bring over my Motec workbook and I'll show you this, okay, so you guys can have an idea of what it is I'm talking about. Okay, so first of all, one of the theories that we've heard about is in regards to the downforce, right? Now, they changed the downforce. They had updated it. If you remember on the second version of the update, all right? Well, I shouldn't say it like that. Let's think of it like this. We had the original, which was before the tire update. Then we had version 1 of the tire update. And then we have this current version, all right? So on version 1 of the tire update, if you remember, that's when we were having to do things like move the wing all the way back on a tacky track to get rear-wheel drive. Now, iRacing had come out and said that they didn't mess with the aero. Okay, and then when they did this last update, they mentioned in the update that they had tweaked stuff on the aero. So I have no idea if they had messed with it, and if they did, I don't know. I don't know anybody in the higher ups of iRacing. Okay, I don't have any connections or insights or anything like that. I'm not in the know, and iRacing wouldn't know me. I don't think they would. I don't think they would know me if they tripped over me on the street, right? So, in terms of what they've done, I don't know. I know what they say that they do, right? And they do a lot of CAD, CFD modeling, where, you know, very high in-depth stuff when it comes to things like aerodynamics and stuff like that, physics modeling, okay? Very, very high in-depth stuff. So, this type of thing they should have, all right? Now, when we look at this here and we're calculating downforce, and keep in mind, I've talked about this numerous times before. Well, I covered this on the page for these, because I have a page up right now. You can get this workbook on the website, but I covered it in that video. And I've mentioned it before in previous videos here on YouTube that I've done. But you can anybody can calculate downforce, okay? If you look at this, okay? If you just do a Google search, I mean, there's formulas for calculating it, right? Here's a formula right here for calculating downforce. Here's another formula for calculating downforce, right? It's just basically you're calculating the surface area of a whatever it is that you're wanting to measure. On the wing sprint car, we're calculating the downforce of the wing. Now, I calculate it based on the center foil of the top wing and the nose wing. A center foil is basically, think of this as like an airplane wing, but it's just flipped upside down, okay? That's all it is. And when I'm calculating it, okay, it is this downforce that it is showing us is basically showing us saying, hey, this is what the downforce should be based on all of those parameters that you have in. Now, here's the deal. I don't know what the coefficient of lift rating is that iRacing uses. I don't know what it is that they use. So I don't claim that this is accurate to what iRacing has in their system. What I'm telling you is based on the parameters that I can get from iRacing and everything else that I've data mined, this is what the downforce should be, right? According to the sim, okay? Or according to my calculations. And if you look at this, all right, we're generating if you look here at the straightaway, 511 pounds of force on the top wing. That sounds about right, okay? From what I know, that seems to be about right, okay? At least in the ballpark. Is it, like I said, accurate? I don't know, but I know that we're generating downforce. Now, when I looked at this data compared to the previous models, the downforce numbers were pretty close to what they were. So like I said, I don't know what iRacing was changing in those parameters, because that's not something that I have. I can only calculate what I can get my hands on in terms of data, or what I can mine, okay? But and the thing that I found interesting is because I've heard other theories about, well, hey, maybe it's the gravity, right? The actual gravity in the sim. Maybe they don't have the gravity in the sim correct. Well, they do, okay? As you can see here, G-forces. Motec actually calculates G-forces, okay, for longitude, latitude, and vertical. A vertical g-force, if you imagine you just standing on the ground somewhere, anywhere on Earth, that you would be registered at 1 g. Okay, g-forces is basically just to get gravity, right? You need mass. All right, a g-force, you're talking about mass and acceleration. Well, if you're standing still, you're just rated at 1 g. When we look at a car just standing still in the pits, it's rated at 1 g. And I've tested this at other places on the track. It's 1 g when you're not moving. Now when you start to accelerate, that's when g-forces change. And from what I can see, these are correct, okay, or at least close to what you would expect to see in real world. Once again, I've never hooked telemetry up to a real life sprint car, so I don't know what that data is. But based on what I'm seeing, this all seems very legit. So when we look at the engine horsepower and the torque, all right, and this was done in the 360, okay, according to iRacing, the horsepower for a 360 sprint car, the winged 360 sprint car, all right, I believe is 720. Let me pull it up real quick and bring this over here. So the tech specs on the 360 sprint car, the horsepower is 720, the torque is 540 foot-pounds. Now you can calculate the horsepower and torque of an engine using some pretty simple formulas, right? So if we know the RPMs, which I can get that here in Motec, okay, and then I have a torque rating, what iRacing says is the torque of that engine, which is 540 foot-pounds, well then I can do some calculating and I can take the RPMs and the torque, and then I can use a conversion, which is the RPM to horsepower conversion, and I can get a engine horsepower, okay? Now this 360's got plenty of horsepower. As you can see here, our high on the 360 is registering up at 935 pounds. Keep in mind, this is a linear measurement, so we all know that there's a special, there's a curve that you would like to see the motor operate in for its optimal horsepower and torque and stuff like that. But just looking at these numbers, right, if we look at the lowest rating, okay, on this lap, all right, and if we actually look at the out lap from the very beginning all the way to the end, you can see that our lowest is 94 horsepower. That's basically where we're almost standing still. But as we increase our speeds and we get up on the throttle here, you can see that we're well above 700 horsepower, and we maintain above that as long as we're on throttle. So the motor's got power, the engine's got its torque, so we know that those are good, right? So the big problem is if we are generating that much more horsepower, and once again, like I said, I don't know how iRacing does this, but what I'm seeing on the data, if we're generating that much more horsepower, then the biggest problem that we're going to have, right, is going to be actually getting that horsepower to the ground. And this is where that wonky ass setup comes into play, because it's on the dynamic loads that I'm seeing the hugest discrepancies, okay? It's dynamic load. Now, in order to understand dynamic load, all right, I need to explain a couple of things first, all right? Some basics when it comes to vehicle dynamics, okay? So basically, when you have a load on a corner, right, you have the wheel load. Essentially, what you're talking about is the amount of force that's being applied to that corner. Now, we have suspension components, right? We have the torsion bar, okay? Torsion bars create load. Remember, shocks control it. A shock is nothing more than a timing device, okay? And that all gets translated down to the contact patch, which is the tire, all right? Now, in a sense, to keep it very simple, the more force that you can apply to that contact patch, the more grip that contact patch should have. Now keep in mind, there is a law of diminishing returns, meaning that it's not just 1-to-1. You can't just put 100% of the force on the right rear tire and receive 100% grip. That's not the way that it works. It does tail off, but for the most part, okay, for a big part of the scale, all right, to keep it simple, it is basically like the more force you can get on that tire, the more grip you're going to have, okay? Just keep it simple. Now, when we look at a normal setup, and I'm going to pull up a normal setup here real quick that I ran at Charlotte, the one that we're going to compare against. All right, you can see pretty normal stuff. We got our tire pressures, 11 inches of stagger. All right, I ran the nose wing at 22, the top wing at 20. We ran them both all the way forward. This was a 50% track. I just did that so there was separation between the top and the bottom. All the laps I did were up around on the top on the cushion. Okay, and then we have a very vanilla bar combination and shock combination. Okay, I ran the same amount of fuel and the same gear as well. So we have a 10 1/4 bars on the right, thousands on the left, okay? Quarter or half a turn, 1 turn, half a turn out with a 5/4, 5/5, 4.5/5, 3/7.5. This is very similar to a real world setup that I would put on a sprint car, right? Like if I was going to the track, okay, this is very close to something that I would put on a real life sprint car. Now, obviously, we'd have to block it and do all that stuff like that. But in terms of these components, like this is close to real life. It really is, okay? Now, this setup, okay, when we look at it in Motec, all right, this setup, okay, is these colored lines right here. And as you can see, as we are going around the track, all right, if you look here, okay, and we've got the side bite up here, we've got the forward bite down here, and then here we have the left front, left rear, and right rear dynamic loads, okay? Calculating load on a torsion bar, once again, there's formulas for this. I'm using real world formulas. I did not just create them out of thin air. All right, I'm using real world formulas. Now you need to have the bar rating and the active length and the torsion arm length and all that type of stuff. And so I got that information to the best of my abilities from what I can find online, because this is, from everything that we know, a XXX chassis. That was what was scanned to my knowledge, and so I got the XXX components, the most common ones that are used on that chassis, and that's what I did to create these numbers. And we can see that going into the corner, right, our left rear load, okay, as the car wings over, right here, we're about almost 1,200 pounds of force on the left rear. On the right rear, we're 893, okay? On the right front, we're 352. On the left front, we're 658. Now, this makes sense, okay? Let's think about this. This makes sense because what's happening? The car's winging over, right? The left side is dropping down because remember, what did we talk about at the very beginning? The car, we wanted to wing over so we can get through the corner as straight and as fast as possible. That's what we want to happen, all right? And this is what's happening. Okay, I'm not even having to lift off the throttle. I'm holding this thing wide open. We're right on the cushion, all right? The thing was on a rail, and we're just, boom, flying right through the corner, all right? Now, let's take a look at a wonky setup. So this thing, we've got our tire pressures. I kept those the same. I tried to have as much the same as possible, all right? So there was very little variables in the data, okay? The nose wing 22, top wing 20, all the way forward, all right? And then let's look at everything else. So this is what these wonky setups look like, all right? The left side's jacked all the way up to for the most part. Okay, they're not all identical to this, but they're similar. The right side is slammed all the way down. You have stiff bars on the left, soft bars on the right, and then you run different shock combinations and wheel spacing and things like that to help control the car, okay? We've got an easy up shock on the left front, a straight shock on the left rear, a 6.6. We have a tie-down shock on the right rear. Basically, this should be like a left rear shock or running it on the right rear. And then we've got a tie-down shock on the right front, okay? And this thing should not go through the corners at all, let alone wide open, okay? Like I said, if I put this setup on one of my drivers' cars in the past, they'd have called the cops and had me arrested for attempted manslaughter. They would have thought I was trying to kill them, all right? You're not driving this around the track. You're just not, okay? But this setup is faster, and it's like 0.2 of a second faster, and the reason is because of the load. If we go back to here and we look at the wonky setup, which is the white lines, take a look at what we've got here. Okay, the left front, as you can see, is actually producing more load than the normal setup. Well, how can that be? The car's not winging over. How can that possibly be? Okay, let's look at if we go to our overview here, I actually calculate the winged over platform of the car. The white here, it's negative, which means it's not winging over. It's not going to the left. It's going to the right. Okay. Meanwhile, the normal setup on the front is winging over by 3 inches, yet it's got less load on the left front than the wonky setup does. What sense does that make? None. Okay. Let's continue. All right. Next, we've got the right front. Keep in mind, this wonky setup, the right front shock is tied down, meaning that when you go into the corner, that right front compresses and then it's being held there, okay? And it's got, obviously, more weight on the right front. That's what we would expect, right? If we've got a tie-down shock, we'd expect it to compress and stay there. But here's the thing. What do we know about weight transfer, right? Well, one of the first things that you learn when it comes to vehicle dynamics, right, when it on race cars or any type of cars, but when we talk about race cars, right, we talk about weight transfer. How does weight transfer? Well, it goes corner to corner, front to back, side to side. Therefore, if I tie down my right front corner in everything that we know about race car dynamics, we should be taking weight off of the left rear. All right, we should not be getting more weight on the left rear. Yet, for some magical reason, on the left rear, we've got 300 pounds more force on the left rear with that wonky setup than we do with the normal setup, and it's not winged over. What sense does that make? I'll answer that for you. None. It makes zero sense. It makes no sense at all. Not only are we loading the left rear more by literally almost 300 pounds of force, we're also loading the right rear more. So this is where the advantage is coming in on this setup. All right. You are literally loading the tires so much more than a regular setup that the drive, the grip that you're getting is it's unparalleled, right? It really is. You're getting so much more grip than a normal setup with this wonky piece of crap. All right. Like that's what's causing it. Now here's the thing, all right? Because I was trying to figure out, well, what's causing this? Okay? What's the reason that this is happening? All right? Because this shouldn't be the case. All right, we talked about this. If I'm driving down the road and my left rear tire is literally like off the ground, I shouldn't have more load there. For example, if we look at the dynamic loads on a dirt late model, right? When the car hikes up, guess what? That left rear is not loaded by 2,000 pounds, right? In fact, it's the least loaded out of the other corners, okay? Because it's hiked up. Now, yes, there is load there because you've got downforce and all these other factors playing into it. But in terms of the mechanical load on it, it's not loaded like the right front is, right? Or the right rear when it's hiked up. So why is this sprint car? All right, so what I did was I was like, all right, well, let me try doing the same exact tests with the same exact setups, but I'm going to do it on a non-wing, right? Because that's the only thing that it's the only variable that I can remove. I can remove the wings and try it on a non-wing car. And so that's what I did. I tried the non-wing setup, okay? The colored lines, let me make sure I've got the right ones on here. There we go. So the colored lines are the normal non-wing setup. The white lines are the wonky non-wing setup. Keep in mind, the only thing that's different is there's no wing. Okay, now yes, there are a couple of changes in terms of stagger. I'm not running 11 inches of stagger. I'm running like 8 inches of stagger, but it's the same on both cars. Okay, and then the wonky setup is the same as we've got on the wing sprint cars. Soft bars on the right, stiff on the left jacked up, right drop down. Stupid shock combination, right? Like it's this exact same thing. And looking at this, you can see that here we actually make sense. This is showing us what we would expect to see. Meaning, on the wonky setup, right? The white line, what's our left rear load? Our left rear load is 160 pounds less than a normal setup. That's what it should be. You see, when the left rear is not on the ground, it shouldn't be out. It shouldn't have more load than every other corner of the car. Okay? That's what we're seeing here on the non-wing. That makes sense. That's what we should see. Okay? The right front, we've got it tied down and soft. Guess what? It's got more load than the normal setup, which it should. But, like I said, the left rear has got less load, which it should. All right? Right rear is almost the same. Okay, and the left front is close. I mean, you're only talking like 20-30 pounds of force. So the biggest difference that we see is with the right front and the left rear, which is what we would expect to see on a setup like this. But what's the one thing that we're missing? The one thing that we're missing is the wing. And that is what I think is causing the issue. I think it's got something to do with the aerodynamics. I really do. Now, what is the problem? What needs to be fixed? Here's the deal. I don't know. Okay, I have no idea. Without me knowing how iRacing does this stuff, what's going on in the background, there's no way for me to say, oh, no, this should be this or that should be this, right? There's no way for me to know that. And not only that, even if I knew everything that they were doing, there's no guarantee that I would know how to fix it. Okay, what I can do is tell you from everything that I'm seeing, to me, the problem seems to be the aerodynamics. All right, it seems to be the downforce. For whatever reason, when you're loading the car like that with that wonky setup, the downforce is allowing you to get that much more load on the left rear. And the reason why I think that has to do with the angle of the car, the rake angle, and the winged over platform of the car. So let me explain to you what I mean. When you have a car that looks like this, okay, you have to imagine when we're going through the corner, right? What's happening? It's not winging over. It's staying flat. Not only that, the left rear is actually kind of up. When you increase your angle of attack on something when it comes to downforce, what do? You increase downforce. It's the reason why we see on dirt late models why the left rear hikes up so much. They're trying to increase the downforce on the rear of the car. That's why they do that. Okay, it's why, Formula One cars have wings that, that they can move up and down at different angles, right? Because the more angle that you have, the angle of attack, the more downforce you're going to have. Well, if I can actually load the car mechanically and then set the platform up to where now I'm literally basically turning my wing into the deck lid of a late model, right? And I'm going to increase that downforce, that's going to give me the best of both worlds. All right, now that's the theory that I think, or my theory in terms of what's happening. I have no idea if I'm correct. What I can tell you is from the data that I'm seeing, that's what it's showing me. All right, and I can 100% guarantee you that no way, no how should I be able to set up a sprint car with a wonky setup like that, where like I said, the left rear is literally barely touching the ground, and have it be loaded by 300 pounds more than a normal setup that is winging over on the left side. That makes absolutely zero sense. It defies the laws of physics. Okay, that's what you need to understand. This is not Tommy's make-believe world, right? We're talking about like the laws of physics, right? That are supposed to be unbreakable, okay? Like the language of the universe, okay? We're violating that with this stuff, all right? And it really needs to be fixed, all right? So that's what I see. What's going on with the sprint cars. That's what I think is the problem with the sprint cars. And it's also one of the reasons why I think the non-wing sprint cars are so good right now, because I think they've really got those dialed in. I really do. Yes, I would love to see them update those cars a little bit more. I would like to see some better shocks on the cars. I do think the shocks could stand to be improved. And I really think it would be good to see some updates to the track states, cushions, different things like that. But overall, the non-wing sprint car is really, really good. The rest of the dirt cars, not so much right now. And one of the biggest reasons we've got a big problem, like I said, is with this wing sprint car. It's just an absolute disaster, okay? Now, really quick, before we wrap this video up, I wanted to go over one more car, which is the Dirt Midget, because this is another one that a lot of people have been talking about, and there's a lot of stuff happening with it. And there's just a couple of things that I want to kind of clear up with it, because a lot of people have been saying things about them, and I think we can kind of eliminate those as potential problems, and I'll show you what I mean. So one of the things that people have been talking about with the Dirt Midgets is that they don't have enough power. There's not enough horsepower with the Dirt Midgets. I don't actually think the problem is horsepower. If we look at the calculations on the Midget like I did with the sprint car, we are seeing a lot of horsepower on the Dirt Midgets. In fact, at Kokomo, me turning laps around Kokomo, just around the middle of the track, we're getting up to almost 500 horsepower based on the RPMs and the numbers that, keep in mind, these are the numbers that iRacing gives us, right? That's the only thing I can go off of. I can't just guess what the torque is. I have to go off of what iRacing is telling me. So based off what they're telling us, this is what we're generating in terms of horsepower. Now, based off the horsepower that they're telling us, what we're generating in torque is also very high. We're somewhere, around 470 foot-pounds of torque. Like that's a lot when you consider a 4-cylinder engine in a 1,000-pound car. Also, we're averaging 313 foot-pounds of torque, right? Based on the RPMs and stuff like that. So quite a bit, okay? Now, here's the thing, because horsepower at the crank is one thing, but what about at the wheels, right? Well, that's the thing. Well, I can't tell you exactly what it is because I don't know. I don't know if iRacing uses a fall off, right? Because if you look at any car on Earth, right, there's always going to be some form of fall off in terms of horsepower at the crank and horsepower at the rear wheels. Now, if you look at a rear wheel drive car, like a high performance one, usually that's a factor of like 1.15 in terms of what you're looking at. If we use that, just simple calculations, keeping it really simple, based on the horsepower that we're generating in terms of the data here, we're still getting over 400 horsepower at the wheels, okay, at the rear wheels. So here's the thing. I believe the biggest problem with the dirt midgets is not horsepower. I actually think it has plenty of horsepower. I think the biggest problem with the dirt midgets is a lack of grip. See, I think the issue that these cars are having is that whatever they did to the tires, and look, like I said, when the update came out, I thought it was a huge step in the right direction. I really did. That first update they did on the midgets was horrible, right? I mean, we were running like 20 gallons of fuel just to qualify because we couldn't get any drive, all right? And they updated them again, and they were just way, way better than what they had been before. They're still not where they need to be. These cars should definitely have a lot more drive. I've heard people talk about they were dialed back, a while ago at Chili Bowl because people were complaining about these cars doing wheelies. I have a newsflash for you guys. The cars do wheelies at the Chili Bowl all the time. Go watch the Chili Bowl. Right? There's wheel stands all the time. The first year that we went, I saw more cars doing wheelies at the Chili Bowl than I'd ever seen a midget at any other midget race ever, right? And not just because there was more cars there than any other race I'd ever been to, but just like on a per percentage basis, everyone was doing wheelies. Midgets have a ton of action in real life. The front end's constantly bouncing around, man. I mean, that's how those things are, okay? And you shouldn't be going into a corner, okay, on a tacky track in a midget, especially at a bigger track, right, running at a track like Charlotte. I shouldn't be like having to lift off the throttle to get grip, okay? These things should be so hooked up that you're like just on throttle, and that front end is you're having to work it because the car's a handful. That's how these things drive. That's how it should drive, and we're missing that. So whether that is something to do with the tread pattern, I know that that's something they've changed before, the tread pattern, whether it's that in terms of the forward drive, whether it's the sidewall, the slip angle, I don't know. The weight distribution, I don't know what it is. But I can tell you that looking at the data, based on what iRacing is telling us, these cars have got plenty of horsepower and plenty of torque. What they need, from what I can see, is a lot more forward drive. That's what they're missing. And I would love to see that because these used to be my favorite car on the sim, and it wasn't even close. And now they're not even, if I was filling out a tournament for my favorite cars, these wouldn't even make it onto the bracket, which is really sad because I love these things. So hopefully here soon we'll see iRacing fix some of these problems. I'm really hoping that they will, because dirt has gotten stagnant. It's gotten stale, right? When everybody is running an exploit setup that's not fun to drive and the racing sucks, and then you hop into a dirt midget that doesn't get enough drive when you're on throttle, and not only that, the track is so tacky at the end of the session that you are literally playing follow the leader around the bottom, right? Like I remember when you would go and run it like Kokomo in the Midgets, by the second heat, dude, there was multiple grooves that you can run. Like it was, Kokomo was one of the funnest tracks in the Midgets on the sim because it was so racy. By the time you got to the feature, it was incredible. The Midgets they were awesome to race with, man, because once the track slicked off some, they were some of the raciest cars on the sim. Now, if you qualify up front, you're basically up front. I mean, like, because it's so hard to pass, because it's just like one groove. There's like nothing else happening. You can't, like, wouldn't dare move into the high line at another track because the bottom is just so fast. And that's the thing that I'm really having a hard time with when it comes to these cars. Because like I said, they should have a lot more drive and a lot more just action and grip. Like they should be. People are like, well, they're a handful of drive. They should be a handful of drive, right? If this is a sim, they should be. Okay, we've seen some of the best dirt drivers in the world go out and literally wreck just by themselves in a corner because these things are that hard to drive. All right, and so that's what we should see with them in the sim, right? If we're trying to make this thing real or as close to real as we can, we should be heading in that direction. All right, now really quick before I go, a couple of things, because I just spent the last, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, whatever it is, the length of this video, talking about all the things that are wrong with dirt and these cars, and I don't want this to sound like just an absolute bitch fest, because that's not what this is. I love this platform. I love sim racing. It's what I do. I spend literally the bulk of my days not only on sim racing, but helping thousands of other drivers enjoy the sim more, enjoy the platform more, right? And I don't want people to think that I'm just like complaining, because I'm not. I think what iRacing does is so incredible, and I think it is so difficult. It really is. Imagine getting laser scan data of a track and a car and then going to a race and then someone saying, hey, take that, all that information, and go put it into a computer as ones and zeros. That's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult, right? So what we have is really amazing, all right? I just really want to see it improve, because I think the state that we are in right now with dirt is sad. I really do. It's just not fun right now, and that's the whole reason every single one of us got into sim racing. Not one of us got into it because we were like, dude, you know what I would love? I would love to spend money, be more stressed out and pissed off all at the same time. Like, none of us did that, right? Like, we did this because it's like, man, that looks awesome and I bet that's fun. And then we did it and we were like, dude, this is incredible. Like, I want to do this. And yes, they have been updating this stuff because they are trying to improve it, and that is awesome. I commend them for that. Unfortunately, it seems like we've taken, some steps either in the wrong direction or have gotten off the path or something, and I'm just really hoping that they fix this soon. All right, and I just wanted to do this video because I've been asked a ton about what's going on with the cars, and I haven't really, to be honest, I just haven't been messing with them. Just been like, yeah, whatever. I've been focusing on the asphalt side so much lately that the dirt stuff, I'm just like, whatever, who cares, But like I said, because I created all the new updated Motec workbooks, and we've got the new Sprint Car Road to Pro training program coming up, it was like, all right, let's dive into these things, figure out what's going on with them. And so that's why I did this. Okay, so hopefully that kind of sheds some light on it. Hopefully iRacing will do something about this. I don't expect them to do anything because of this video. I'm just hoping they're already working on it. Okay, I really am. So hopefully we'll see something happen with this in the very near future. Fingers crossed. All right, but anyways, you guys, that's going to do it all for this video. Now, really quick, please do me a favor. If you like this, hit that like button. Also, down below in the comments, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think is going on with the cars. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe you've got a totally different theory, right? And is 100% correct. I mean, I know of actual real life dirt midget drivers that have gone to iRacing and they're like, dude, I will help for free. And from what they've said, like, iRacing is just like, yeah, whatever, has ghosted them. So I mean, maybe I'm way off base, maybe they're working on stuff behind the scenes and we don't know. I don't know, right? But if you've got a theory, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. All right, also, like I said, I mentioned My Motec Dirt workbooks are now available on the website. It is for a very limited time. You know, I had the NASCAR workbooks up, and that has already passed. April 1st, those came down. The Dirt Oval workbooks are now available. If you want to learn about getting those, I've got it for the big block, the sprint car, and the dirt late model. If you want to check those out and learn more about them, you can. Those are linked down in the description below, or you can go to schoolsimracing.net/Motec. Also, we've got the Sprint Car Road to Pro training coming up. Me and Greg Lamy and Shea Paulo. All right, those guys are two-time World of Outlaws pros here on the sim, and we're going to be putting together a brand new training program that's going to teach you everything that you need to know to be a pro-level driver in the sprint cars, right? I mean, everything from how to drive them to setups to I'm going to be giving you a Motec workbook, going over the set, all that stuff. All right, so if you want to learn more about any of that stuff, links down for everything in the description below. Also, you can join the SSR community. That's completely free. Just head over to schoolsimracing.net, click on the button that says join community. I'll get you in the Facebook group, the Discord, all that stuff like that. And our league, the National Auto Racing Club, is wrapping up here. I believe tonight is the last night of this season. This is the last week of the season. And after that, we open up recruiting for the league. So all of you who have been messaging me wanting to get into the league, you're going to have your chance here very soon. But the best way to do that is be in the SSR Discord, because we open it up to SSR members before anybody else. All right, so if you're interested in any of those things, links for all of it down in the description below. But that's going to do it. Thank you guys very much, as always, for joining me. And until next time, I want to wish you good luck, good racing, take care.